What's up, guys? This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Eisen Forged Fitness. Eisen Forged is a fitness apparel line made by goons for goons. With a unique mesh of golden age gym apparel and Germanic pagan aesthetics, they strive to light a new flame in the hearts of modern heroes as they sculpt their highest selves within the Temple of Iron. Head on over to www.eisenforgedfitness.com or follow at eisenforged_fitness on Instagram to find out how to order. This episode is also brought to you by Gorilla Piss Ammonia. Gorilla Piss Ammonia Inhalants is the result of years of research, testing, and athlete feedback. It is used by some of the biggest names in the strength and combat sports world. Manufactured, packaged, handled, and shipped by one of 4 team members in a small facility in the central U.S. It is the official ammonia of Team Franklin and the world-famous Gorilla Pit Elite Powerlifting Gym in Illinois. They are not afraid to tell you that Gorilla Piss isn't for everyone. If you are a passive strength athlete or someone who is sensitive to violent bursts of adrenaline, this may not be for you. Gorilla Piss offers both original and mint-scented ammonia, as well as a variety of different flavors of pre-workout supplements. Gorilla Piss has made their name in the fitness industry entirely by word of mouth, relying on their customers to share their enthusiasm for their products. Orders can be made by direct message on Instagram via @gorilla_piss_ammonia or through the Gorilla Piss Facebook page. Gorilla Piss Ammonia, because mama ain't raised no bitch. My guest today is an elite strength coach and the creator of Gorilla Piss Ammonia Inhalants. Give it up for Dave Underwood. And 3, 2, 1. Dave Underwood, thanks for coming on to the podcast, brother.
Thanks for having me.
I've been using this Gorilla Piss that you came up with, and I gotta say, this is some strong shit. I've been loving it. I'm finally about a week back into training, back in the gym. The gym's finally open, and this has been pretty awesome. Having this in my gear bag when I'm going and powerlifting again. I know tons of guys have been asking me about it and wondering what it does. So before we kind of dive into how you ended up here, promoting Gorilla Piss and helping out your team and promoting your team and training guys and all that kind of stuff surrounding your brand, maybe you could tell us what you came up with and what this does before we dive into the origin story.
Yeah, for sure. Gorilla Piss is just an ammonia inhalant. We've all been somewhere where someone faints, someone passes out. You see someone get that little capsule out of the first aid kit, and they smash it and wave it under their nose, and like magic, it brings them back around. They're coughing, they're sputtering. It's just like nothing happened. Well, we use the same technology, just in a bottle, much more concentrated, much stronger, lasts a lot longer. For generations, you've seen your strongmen, you've seen your powerlifters, you've seen your fighters, same thing. They get to where they're getting ready for that big attempt, the PR, the record, the fighters, just had his ass handed to him and just needs a little something. They hit him with that smelling salt, and instantly they've got the adrenaline rush. They're back in the game. It's the fight or flight reaction. You hit that, it gives you the adrenaline rush. Right there, you're either gonna wake up, you're gonna get your shit together, you're gonna puke your toenails up. I've seen both.
Yeah, it's awesome. Like I've been watching your content and stuff like that, and there's fucking guys, squatting, there's deadlifting 1,000 pounds, and they've got fucking nosebleeds, and it's just like you've created a superior product. Because I tried a couple other smelling salt, and you get a little bit of a whiff of it, but first time I shook this shit up and sniffed it, I felt like somebody punched me in the face, and then it was like go time. It's incredible. Like even just the other day, I've been just taking it slow, getting it back into it. I had injured my shoulder, about a year ago, and it was the first time I'd gone and tried to pick up over 400 the other day, and it went up like it was 225. So I don't know the science behind it, but the shit works. So if anybody wants to try out Gorilla Piss Ammonia, Dave's doing it real old school kind of handshake type business, which I really like. Where just send him a direct message on Instagram, and he'll set you up and get this sent to your house. But it's interesting because I think kind of got in touch originally because I saw that my good friend Joel Blanton was using this stuff, and I fucking love that guy. I've met so many inspiring dudes just through social media and through my personal brand. And you were another one that I wanted to talk to. So maybe you can give us a bit of a backstory because, we've talked about it a little bit on Instagram, but I think you've got a really inspiring story. So I'm just going to kind of hit play on you and we'll go from there.
Yeah. We'll start with, first I'll give you a little bit of background on the Gorilla Piss. You'll just touch on that again. It took me a long time to come up with it. I've been doing strongman for 20 years. Mm-hmm. Back then there wasn't a lot of sanctioned strongman. It was country boys getting together, throwing tires, lifting concrete blocks, dumb shit like that. I actually started at a county fair. We did the county's strongest man, and it was you had to be from my county to qualify for the contest. Well, then we had one big cock strong farm boy that won 3 years in a row, and I couldn't get anybody to come out and compete against the bastard anymore. So we ended up sanctioning the United States Strongman, and I was developing my pre-workout, my ammonia all this time. The ammonia, it took forever. I tried recipes, shit that fizzle out in a day or two, shit that didn't smell at all. I even had one batch that melted the fucking bottles. We're at the point where my wife's like, the neighbors think we're fucking making meth. You got to knock this shit off. Well, then my best friend, my mentor, W.T. Franklin, he's my coach. He tells me one day, he's like, man, your shit's real. He said, I think this is it. Let's start putting it out there. Let's kind of beta test it, get some feelers on it. And jokingly, I train out of a gym called the Gorilla Pit. That's a powerlifting gym. Jokingly, I said, I'm going to call it Gorilla Piss just to get under his skin. And he told me I couldn't. Well, of course, here we are now. We've got, like you said, combat sports. We've got powerlifters. We've got strongmen. So we've kind of gotten to where we are. We rely on word of mouth. We don't have a website. Very rudimentary, very the way men are supposed to work. A guy hits me up. He wants it. I'll send it to him. He sends me money. If a man isn't good for his word, what the hell is he good for?
Yeah, I like that mentality. It's really cool. And it's a cool way to run a business, especially now where things are so impersonal, right? You have so many of these gigantic brands, especially in the fitness industry, where they're totally faceless. And even the people that represent the companies, they don't really have a lot of interaction with the actual brand. A lot of these sort of brand influencer type situations are, they talk to a marketing manager and they get a discount and they send some stuff out, or you can just log on to the website and sign up and anybody can represent your company. So I like that you've picked guys, that you've had a conversation with and you're like, well, do I like actually talking to this dude? Because if I don't even like talking to this dude, I probably don't want him representing my brand. So I think it's really cool that you've done it the right way and an old way, which we've kind of moved away from. That's super impersonal.
And I love the way we do it. I guarantee you get a bottle of Gorilla Piss from me. You get a pouch of pre-workout from me. My wife has put the lid on that bottle. My wife sealed that package of Gorilla Piss. It has touched my hands, her hands. You'll actually get the card in the package that's signed by me and her, thanking you for being part of the family. That's how we get down. I've got gyms that we barter. Hell, I don't need the cash. I'm not in this to get rich. I'm here to make a difference in the industry. We'll barter. Hey, I got a guy that needs training in that area. I'm going to send you a bulk order Gorilla Piss. Write my guy a program.
Right.
That's the way it's supposed to be. Yeah,
exactly. It's really cool. And I think just the fact that, you're facilitating a situation where small businesses can help other small businesses, and guys that are trying to make a name for themselves can help other guys who are trying to make a name for themselves. And that really resonates with me because, a lot of the brands that I've worked in with, promoted with, the only ones that I'll work with are ones where I've either already tried it or I want to try it because I think that they have a better product. I don't really care if it's the biggest brands out there, or I don't even really care if any particular guy has a gigantic following. Because when I started out, no one wanted to fucking talk to me, right? You know, one of the first guys who gave me support was Joel. And you know, now, like, I talk to that guy every single day. You know, I would call him a friend, even though we haven't been able to really spend any time in person together. But you know, he's encouraging, and I've been encouraging him when we go back and forth. And you know, like, those are the kind of relationships that I want to build. And I think it's really cool, and just it's cool for me also to be able to help an up and coming brand that has steered away from the status quo, so to speak.
Yeah, Joel reached out to me early on before I was even public with this. Joel actually hit me one night. My wife and I were just sitting there talking, and I got a message from Baby Silverback, and I was like, hey, I followed that guy. And he just told me, he said, man, what you're doing is inspirational. He said, what you're doing is working. He said, what you're doing has sparked me, man, keep doing it. It kept me going. And since then, he and I have gone back and forth. Like you said, you know, I talk to him, probably not as much as you do, but I like to, like, if my spirit takes a kick in the balls, I give Joel a holler. You know, he always sends me the positive energy. He always puts me back on the right path. He always knows, you know, hey, this guy needs this. Let's do this. I mean, the guy's awesome.
Yeah, totally. And I do the same thing, and it's good to have that kind of camaraderie and that circle of men around where, you know, if you need some encouragement, or you need to have a boost in the day, you know that you're going to be able to go and strike up a conversation with somebody, and you're going to get energy from it, right? And then there's those other people where, you know, if you get started on your day, it's going to send you on a downward spiral. And so I've really taken the time to cultivate those relationships and almost kind of shield myself from a lot of the negativity that's out there by surrounding myself with guys who are just fucking amped up about life, and they're doing stuff. You know, it's always the guys who are doing stuff that lift you up, and it's always the ones who are not really doing a whole lot who are the first ones to bring you down, or to buy into your own negative habits, instead of, you know, being like, hey man, you know, what you're doing is not working, quit bitching, and, you know, get back to the task. And that's kind of what I think can be gained from building these relationships on the internet. I think everyone talks a lot of shit about social media, but I think most people don't use social media the right way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you follow any of my social media feed, I like to point that out. You know, my social media feed is just that it's social. You know, I use it to interact with people that I don't get to see. I want to see vacation pictures. I want to see pictures of your dog. I want to see pictures of your kid. I want to hear what you've got going on, how your training's going. I don't want to hear, you know, why you're down in the dumps. You're pissed off at your wife. Your girlfriend's burnt your fucking dinner. You know, I don't want to hear that shit. Mm-hmm. You know, I've got a friend. He'll tell you, and he's a pretty honest guy. If you're dealing with somebody like that, he'll tell him, you're a fucking oxygen thief. You know, you're doing nothing for me, but you're stealing my air. We're done. Mm-hmm. You know, and I like the way that he approaches that. You just cut them off, be done with it.
Yeah, it's tough because you know, I think people get pretty comfortable even with the negative influences that they have around them, because, you know, I think it's scary to kind of go off on your own, or if you have to, but, you know, you don't have to be a lone wolf forever. And I don't think it's good to be a lone wolf, but sometimes the people you have surrounding you is worse than having nobody surrounding you. At least when you get by yourself, you can redirect your thoughts and get on a path that's positive. And, you know, when you do that and you start to change your behavior, other positive people and other motivated people and people who are striving to kind of make something of themselves, they just come, they're just attracted to you like a magnet. And, you know, I get it, because, you know, years ago, I was not surrounded by those kinds of people at all. The kinds of people that I'm surrounded by now, I don't think they would have any part of me, you know, because I was negative and I wasn't really the person that was inspiring others and going somewhere while everyone's over here. And, you know, that's really just, it's a huge shift in mindset. And you and I had kind of talked about that attitude shift that really sends you on a different path. And so I really wanted to kind of dive into that. And maybe you can kind of start with some of your earlier life and where you grew up and how you ended up here.
Yeah, for sure. We'll start with my early life, I was born in a very small town in central Illinois. I was born to a 19-year-old mother to 20-year-old father. My father was a felon. My father actually was in jail most of the time my mom was pregnant with me. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She was already raising my big brother. We lived in a low-income housing. Dad did odd jobs. Dad worked on cars. Dad was a truck driver. You did. Okay, I'm back.
Gotcha. Yeah, there you
All
are.
right, you there?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so yeah, I was born to young parents. Like I said, my dad was a felon. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. I had a big brother. We didn't have a lot of means growing up. Being in a small town, obviously, your name means a lot. So when I started school, I already had that stacked against me. I went in. They knew who my parents were. They knew I didn't come from a lot. Then my family didn't have a lot to offer. You know, my graduating class was like 48 people.
Wow.
So
very small town.
Yeah, very small town. I get started going through school. It comes about I have a learning disability. Troubles reading, troubles writing. At first it was, well, you know, he's going to be special education. There's nothing we could do with him. My mom, thank God, she took up my fight. She said, no, you know, we can figure this out. Let's do this. She fought tooth and nail from the time I was in first and second grade, clear up through high school. They tried the dumbest shit. They tried special classes, you know, sitting me in the corners of classrooms and ignoring me until I could get a special teacher to come in and talk to me. Wow. They sent me off for testing to tell them to prove to my parents that I was broken and they couldn't fix me. Well, of course, dealing with all of this, you get a behavior problem because I was the weird kid. I was the kid that sat in the back of the classroom. You know, I might as well have been eating my boogers
socially outcast, right? You know, you don't include somebody, and then you know they're just kind of left to try and sort through it themselves. And when you don't have a lot of resources and you don't have other people rooting for you, you know, you're so lucky that you're saying like your mom and had your back, right? You know, because when you originally told me kind of what your origin story was, this really resonated to me because I have a sister that is special needs, and you know, I've seen the way that she's actually thrived through her development in sport and her development in school. And that was 100% due to my parents. Because if they hadn't have been advocating for her and rooting for her and taking the extra, you know, 10,000 plus hours to make sure that she was going to be successful, nobody else had her back and nobody else was on her side. So, you know, it was just, that's why I was really excited to kind of talk to you about this because, you know, it's inspiring to be able to speak to somebody else about this who kind of knows what those challenges are like, but from your perspective.
Yeah, it was hell. Like I said, being the social outcast, I was the kid that got made fun of. I was the kid, you know, I was always bigger than everybody. I was a little fat kid on the playground, got pushed down, got made fun of, you know, hey, retard, you know, this and that. And luckily, my parents were there. My parents had my back. My mom battled with the school every turn. My dad actually got arrested inside the school, sticking up for me one time. Wow. I had one special education teacher that came along when I was like third grade, and she took up my cause, and we're actually still in contact to this day, and she worked with my mom to get what I needed. And we eventually went through testing and jumped through the hoops and did all the necessary requirements and never really got answers to this day. Only my wife can read my writing. It's awful. But basically they told my parents, you know, a doctor said, there's nothing wrong with the boy. This is just the way he is, and you're going to have to deal with it. I made it all the way through high school. I made it all the way through college. You know, we had special circumstances. I could type my papers. I recorded notes so that I could use them that way, you know, but it took, like you said, tens of thousands of hours of my parents just fighting for me, taking up for me, because we were in a small school district. I didn't have the proper name. I wasn't a good athlete. So I was a throwaway kid. I actually, because I had a behavior problem, I had a teacher tell my mom when I was probably fourth, fifth grade, just get used to the fact he'll wind up in prison.
Wow.
Yeah. And
so it's just zero support from the educational system. It's always interesting to me when I talk to guys from the States, especially, you know, like you coming from small town. I'm more of like a rural area, I'm assuming. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, I'm in a big farm area. Yeah.
Yeah. So places like that, and just, middle of nowhere in America, I'm always curious about that, because, Canada, as much as people like to complain about it, we have a lot of support from the government. One, when it comes to education. Two, when it comes to, contrast between like different services like healthcare and law enforcement and other government provided services that we benefit from. But when I talk to guys like you, and I've heard things about some of the issues with the education system in the United States, I don't know much about it. I know that there are different classes of education, basically for different economic classes and social classes and things like that have been kind of set up, and it's very confusing. Like there's the charter schools, and then there's private schools. Maybe you can tell me a little bit about how that works in America and where you fell into that living in a small town.
Okay, you like there a second. Yeah, I can kind of fill in the best I can. I went to a public school. So public school was your lower income up to your upper middle class. We had one private school in our town. You had to belong to the Catholic Church to go to that school. I did not belong to the Catholic Church, couldn't go to that school, probably didn't want to go to that school. But I was, like I said, I was low income as a younger child, so I got lumped in with the public school, where it was the children from the low income housing. It was blue collar moms up to the, like I said, upper middle class. The mom and dad works at the bank, or the manages the grocery or whatever. But then other than that, you've got, like I said, your charter schools, your private schools. That's going to be more your higher, I guess your higher class. In my area, private schools aren't really a big thing unless it's a religious deal. I went to college in Texas, and in Texas, private schools were everywhere. Even for lower income, they were afforded private schools. In Illinois, I'm sure Illinois is a train wreck. It's a lot of public schools. A lot of our resources, unfortunately, go to Chicago. So down here, downstate, because contrary to popular belief, Illinois is bigger than Chicago. There's thousands of acres of cornfields, bean fields. There's horses, cows, pigs, all kinds of crazy shit. But down here, it's mostly public schools, and you'll have children from a vast array of life all in one classroom.
Right. Yeah, it's super interesting to me. And it's interesting to me just with even some of the things that are going on in society right now, and especially more so online in the kind of Twitter craze world. But, it's interesting to me, and I don't want to talk about this too much, but it just came to mind when I think about how much people are talking about white privilege right now. And you don't sound like a guy who's benefited very much from his white privilege. Growing up in a small town with a learning disability, low income, father was in and out of prison, I think, is like you were saying. And, you weren't afforded a lot of opportunities based on the color of your skin. And I think about this a lot when people talk about this, because there are places, I think, in America, and you'd probably know better than I do, where things are just really hard for everybody.
There are. When you come from a small town, again, my graduating class, I think there was 3 black kids in my graduating class. Mm-hmm. They were an oddity. It wasn't something that was normal. And throughout our childhood, they had it pretty rough. Mm-hmm. Because being in a small town, preconceived notions about people of color. Mm-hmm. None of us had it easy coming up. We all played in the same parks. We all did the same thing, same rec league. None of us had it easy coming up. I don't think it's fair to say this class had a privilege, this class had a privilege, this class had a privilege. Man, we all had it rough.
Everyone had it hard. Yeah. And like I said, I've grown a little bit tired of a lot of the political discussions, but it's always interesting to me when I get to talk to someone from a totally different part of North America, because it's interesting. I think Canada is fairly unified from coast to coast as far as our politics go, and even as far as a lot of the economic challenges are fairly even. You know, obviously there's certain areas that are lower income, certain areas that are higher income. But when I look at the United States, it's very different because state to state, it's almost like a different country every time you go to a different state. It's governed differently, completely different demographics, even completely different climates. It's just America's this crazy diverse place, and and if you were to drive coast to coast, you would think that you were in 5 different countries.
Yes, you go from just right here in Illinois. I spent 15 years working in law enforcement between police departments and correctional prisons, whatever. And we get most of our clientele from Northern Illinois, Chicago area. Those guys, they come down here, they start experiencing life around people like me. When I meet a young man from Chicago, I talk funny compared to him. He talks funny compared to me. The life experiences we've had are totally different. We're only separated by 200 miles. Mm-hmm. I remember one story in particular. I was doing intake at the prison. A busload of new inmates were coming from Chicago. This young man gets off the prison bus. He looks around, and you'd have thought the kid saw the Field of Dreams. I say, hey, man, what's going on? I've never seen this much grass before. Dude, you're inside of a prison. And he was just amazed. He'd never seen that kind of grass before. Mm-hmm. And he started to explain to me, he said, I've never left an 8-block radius of where I was born.
Wow.
And to a guy like me, I'll take off on a weekend and cover 500-600 miles. It's just absurd to think that goes on right around us. But then you'll go to just the next state over, Iowa, or you'll go south to Kentucky, or you'll go north to Michigan, and it's absolutely totally different. Like you said, the climate's different, the way of life's different. You get to see different plants, different animals. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I've talked about a little bit about this with my good friend Kyle, who plays in my band with me, because he's toured with another band a lot, and that was exactly what he had to say. It's different every place that you go. But just to get back, I know we're going to talk about the law enforcement stuff, but I just want to kind of get back to more where you started, I guess, probably closer into high school. You said that you didn't really start out as an athlete, but now, you've got a career in the fitness industry. So were you always athletic, or when did you kind of pick up sports? What kind of sports did you dive into, and how did that play into this shift in creating opportunity for yourself?
Well, it started out, it's a funny story. Like I said, I was always bigger than everybody. I was taller, but I was always just a soft kid. Well, I was the kid that I moved shit for people. I helped the teacher move desks. I was that guy. Use Dave. He's the strong kid. That's what I was useful for. So then I was 13 years old, the summer before the 7th grade. There was a gym here in town. It was called Pete's Gym. Pete Schultz was a world record power lifter. Little bitty German guy, about 160 pounds, but deadlifted astronomical amounts of weight. My dad says, boy, if you're going to play football next year, you better start going to Pete's. So Dad takes me down to Pete's, introduces me to the guy. I was 13 years old. I was already bigger than this guy. And he just puts me on a program. He's got these note cards on the wall, football workouts. And he tells me, he says, you'll come in Monday, you'll do this. You'll come in Tuesday, you'll do this. You'll come in Wednesday, you'll do this. And I started out, and I was good at it, and I started getting attention for it. My dad would, my boy's strong, my boy can do this. My boy's strong, my boy does this. Well, then I started playing football, and then I started wrestling, and it was starting to get me noticed. I went from being the outcast, I went from being the throwaway to being the go-to guy. Right. Coach would come up, he'd put his arm around you. Hey, big game Friday, are you ready? Let's talk about this. I was actually the guy now. And
yeah, it totally leveled the playing field.
I wanted to be right. Yeah, I wanted to be the guy. Well, in being the guy, I started picking up friends. The kids in my class started liking me because I was the guy. I was the go-to. I was going to protect the quarterback. I was going to even the score on the wrestling team. So I just kept with it because, like I said, for the first time, I was actually good at something. And so then I stayed with the sports, and then I met my wife. Actually, my wife and I have been together since we were 13 years old.
Wow.
She knew I was a catcher.
That's incredible.
She snatched me up. Yeah. And I tell everybody that my wife saved me. I was a destructive young man that really didn't care about the future, and she reeled me in and smacked me around. She's a little bitty, 4'8", full of hate. She keeps me lined up, and she kind of helped me on my path, as we started into the sports and stuff. After school, after college, I really didn't know where I wanted to go. I took some time off, got super fat. My wife never told me. I look back now and see pictures, and I'm totally embarrassed by it. But whatever. After college, I actually ran triathlons for a minute. I fought. It turns out that's not for me.
Right. Yeah. What is it boxing or MMA or what?
It was boxing. MMA, I may have done a little bit better because I had a wrestling background. Mm-hmm. But this would have been early 2000s when MMA was still in its infancy in the United States, and it was still one of those, it's barbaric. We can't have that. Right. So I did the stand up and punch each other tough man contests.
Right. Well, it was barbaric, though. It was barbaric because if you look at the old UFC, there's no fucking rules. It's crazy. I'll
tell you what.
Sorry, go ahead.
If you'll watch, I think it's UFC 3, and I remember this match specifically, Dan Severn versus Oleg Taktarov. He has the man on the ground dropping knees from a standing position on his fucking face.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, the
guy's taking it like a champ, and the ref's watching like, fuck yeah, let's do this. And finally someone stops it, and the guy gets up, and I'm pretty fucking sure his nose is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, but things have evolved. They're better now.
Yeah. It's still one of the fucking hardest and most difficult, violent, punishing sports on earth, but it's nice that you can't punch a guy in the nuts anymore.
Yes. Yeah, that's a big thing. The nut shots, the biting, the fish hooks, gone.
Yeah.
But back to the anecdote thing, my very first fight in a tough man contest. I get in the ring, I am 6'1", 230 pounds. I fight a guy that's 6'8", 330 pounds. This man's fists look like suitcases.
Yeah, he's like fucking Sasquatch.
Right. He gets in there and he hits me the first time, and I think to myself, are you fucking kidding me? What? And then he hits me the second time, and this is no shit. My mouthpiece flies out in the audience. We stop the fight. Yeah, we stop the fight. The ref gets my mouthpiece. He puts it back in my mouth. I actually got a couple shots in on this big bastard. Then he hit me the third time. And I swear to God, I knelt down and I told the ref, fuck it, start counting. That's how that ended.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And,
yeah. Getting punched in the face by someone 330 pounds. I'm just over 200 pounds. That would probably snap my neck.
It definitely woke me up. When every guy goes into that thinking, I'm the baddest motherfucker here.
Yeah.
I'm going to win this. And then very quickly you realize, no, I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure it's very humbling when you get punched in the face for the first time. You'll decide right away whether or not you like fighting.
Yeah. Yeah. I did it a couple more times because I thought, beginner's luck. I did it a couple more times and then I realized fighting wasn't for me. Yeah. So that's when we went to the strongman. Like I said, it started out very basic. We would flip tractor tires. We would tow trucks with ropes. We would put tractor weights on the hood of a car and tow them for time, stuff like that. And over time, I started collecting more equipment. I started evolving my technique. I actually started paying attention to professional strongman, world's strongest man. I've rubbed elbows with those guys. I've been to the Arnold Schwarzenegger Classic. I've judged at national strongman events, done all that cool shit. And then I made my way with United States Strongman. I'm in good standing with them. I hold a lot of contests for them. All the time I've been working on building a gym, working on the Gorilla Piss. I've got a new pre-workout that's going to drop next month at a powerlifting meet in Dubuque, Iowa. Nice. We're just kind of trying to make our way, like I said, trying to make a dent in the sport. We're not here to get rich. We just want to help people with the shit that we didn't get help with in the beginning.
Right. So yeah, you started it with strongman, but it seems, at least with your what you're promoting now with Gorilla Piss, is you've really dove deep into more of the powerlifting scene. Is that right?
I have. I still host strongman contests, but I don't compete, and that's actually because of my daughter. My daughter is a powerlifter as well. She actually holds 7 national records and 1 world record.
Right.
She's 18 years old, pretty strong young lady. She did strongman with me. Then she did 1 powerlifting meet, and she decided that's where she wanted to stay. Well,
right.
I got no choice now.
For the people
and
that,
then, like I said,
sorry, go ahead.
Then like I said, the Gorilla Pits where we train. I met WT Franklin. WT's now my best friend, my coach, my mentor. He's the guy that's kind of steered me in my business decisions and stuff. And we're stuck there, and we plan to stay there.
Right. So do you have a team of guys that you're training as well? Is that who a lot of the people that you're posting on there?
The team I'm on is Team Franklin. That's WT's team.
Right.
We all come together. We have a core group of coaches. I coach strongman for people who are interested in doing strongman, but right. I lift on the team and help everybody else out.
Interesting. I always wanted to ask because it's like these stark contrast between how things are done up here and how things are done in the States, and it really interests me. But as far as like the powerlifting divisions, and for anyone who's listening to this who might be interested in powerlifting or is going to check out your page and see what Gorilla Piss is all about, could you kind of break down for me like how the divisions are set up in the States? Because it's kind of confusing. There's so many different leagues, and there's tested leagues and untested, and then there's different weight categories and all this kind of stuff. So maybe you can kind of just tell me how that works in the US and where you've been spending your time in that scene, and just talk about powerlifting a little bit, because I think a lot of people see people online just deadlifting in their gym or whatever, but they might not know how much goes into it from a coaching perspective, especially because I coach powerlifting for Special Olympics, and I didn't know. I knew how to lift weights, but I didn't know much about any kind of competition regulations and what goes into that. And as a coach, I think maybe you can either agree or disagree, is you have so much responsibility as a coach to your powerlifting athletes at a competition, which I think is very unique as far as sports go. When you get out there and either let's say you're running track, ultimately by the time you get to the race, it's up to you. But with powerlifting, you're analyzing and coaching your athletes, and you're deciding, what's the best weight that's going to go up there and what the progressions are going to look like. You're walking them through their warm-ups and all that kind of stuff. So maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. We'll start out with meat prep. You always pick a meet you want to do 6 months out, per se. A meat prep can go 12 weeks, 10 weeks, 8 weeks, 6 weeks, depending on your level of comfortable with it. Me, I like a 12-week prep. It gives me 12 weeks before the meet to get everything together. You decide your weight division. Weight divisions are anywhere from your little bitty guys at 100 pounds to your big guys. I compete at 275. I walk around at about 280. Gives me a little bit of room to play with. Beyond me, you'll then have your 308 guys, then your super heavies. Super heavies, those are the guys that are moving massive amounts of weight. Dan Bell, strongest power lifter in the world, actually from a town even smaller than mine, about 40 miles from here. He's about 400 pounds. Giant man.
Wow.
With a 2,528 pound total, I think. Just like I said, an enormous man, but a giant teddy bear, one of the nicest guys you meet. But that's, as far as weight classes, like I said, you go about every 20 pounds all the way up. Then you get into age divisions. You could go teen divisions. Teen divisions, you start 13 years old, then you'll have your 13 and 14-year-olds, your 15, your 16-year-olds, then your 17, your 18-year-olds. Then, they break them down so it's even competition. You're not in there with a kid that's 6 years older than you. Right. Then after that, you go into your juniors, which is going to be your young adults. Well, then from junior to, I think, 38 years old, 35 maybe. 35 years old is open. That is where all your strong guys are going to be. And then after that, you've got a sub-masters class. Sub-master is your 35 to 39-year-old guys. Then master's class is going to be 40 to 50, and then so on and so forth, 50 to 60. This year I actually qualify for the masters, which means I'm getting old, but I still compete. I still compete in the open division because I think that I can.
Right.
Then from a coaching standpoint, you were talking about your responsibility. Coaching is a huge responsibility. You're not only there telling them, do this lift, do this lift, do this lift. You've got to figure out what weights to do at what point in your preparation. That way you are peaked at the meet. You'll go through, say, a 12-week prep. You'll peak in 4 weeks, take a week off. Peak in 4 weeks, take a week off.
Right.
Then do 3 weeks and be ready to peak at that meet. You know, if you peak too early or if you're in the wrong spot in your prep, everything goes to hell. So it's the coach's responsibility to have the numbers figured out to where we've worked up to this point, and you should be on kill the day of the meet. So then the day of the meet comes, it's now the coach's responsibility to figure out your opener. For each event, squat comes first, then bench, then deadlift. For each event, you'll get 3 attempts. Well, your first attempt will be your opener. Your opener is going to be the lightest one of the day. You want to pick something that you know you can handle. You'll go out there, you'll hit the lift, you'll get the bugs out, you know, get comfortable, you're good to go. Well, from that, the coach has to watch that event, see how you handled it. If you absolutely smoked it and there was no question, they'll take a bigger jump on the next one. If you struggled a little bit, it was a grinder, smaller jump on the next one. You know, that's huge for a coach. A power lifter, some power lifters will figure it out on their own. I defer to my coach. You know, when you're getting ready for each lift, they're going to prep you as far as getting your belt ready. Chalk. If you wrap your wrists for your bench, wrap your knees. Knee wraps are huge on a squat. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but wrapping your knees is huge. You have 1 or 2 guys that can wrap your knees. If those guys don't wrap your knees, it's catastrophic.
Yeah. I haven't used wraps mainly just because I haven't gotten to the point. I was actually training to compete, and I was the strongest I'd ever been about a year ago, and then I got hurt. So I've spent the last year babying it and then coming back, and most of it probably had to do with the fact that I was doing too much too often, right? Because, you know, a lot of these guys that are pros, they're not really going for PRs week after week after week, year after year,
Absolutely
right?
Not.
And that's what I was doing. And I think most guys in the gym are doing that, you know, because they want that rush. They want to hit those numbers. But, you know, you end up eventually in a catastrophic situation where you fucking hurt yourself and you can't work out for a year like I did. So how would training generally look, I guess, for those guys, kind of, you know, obviously you're talking about leading up to a competition. So that's when you're starting to really max the envelope. But the rest of the year, you know, you're going up in, you know, small increments, right?
Right. Yeah, you're the PRs. We're not interested in PRs. You know, my coach always tells me save it for the platform. You know, on competition day, we'll see where you're at. There's actually a pretty good analogy. I'm sure you're familiar with who Ernie Lillibridge is. Ernie Lillibridge has a pretty good analogy. He said that maximum strength is like money in the bank. If you've got $1 million in the bank, why would you get it out once a week to play with it?
Right.
You know it's there. Leave it there. Let it mature. You know, just like your maximum effort. If you've got so many maximum efforts in your body, I'm not going to get it out every week and play with it because eventually it's going to be gone. So you do your submaximal lifts and trust the process. Trust that what you're doing is building your strength. You know, as you're going through, you'll hit 85, you'll hit 90% of your maximum. But you'll see a lot of guys in the gym because it's cool to put on Instagram, hit a PR today, 1 rep max of. Well, sure, that's cool, you know, to the 17-year-old gym bros in their Gymshark apparel. That's cool, you know.
But is it really building a foundation of strength, right? Because, you know, it's maybe I'm not doing a 1 rep max today, but maybe the way that I pulled 600 today, 6 months from now, 600 doesn't feel the way it did 6 months ago. That's kind of what the goal is. And maybe your goal is 800 or whatever, but you're building a foundation of strength rather than just going purely on adrenaline and willpower, right? Absolutely.
Yeah, you're actually using like a pyramid, you know, build the level, build the base smaller. You know, as you're going up, you're going to pyramid into the cool stuff at the top. But as long as you've got a solid base, it's just like a tree. You've got a big root system, it's going to be a lot tougher. You know, if you're the guy that's in there every day just trying to push the big numbers, like you said, you're going to hurt yourself. You're going to fuck something up just because you wanted to be the cool guy. It's just not worth it.
Right. Yeah, it's totally, it's that psychological thing, right? Because it's, you think you're getting stronger when you see the numbers going up, but if you can only lift that on a Sunday when all the conditions are right and you spent 2 days carbing up and you've got your fucking Gorilla Piss, nose full of Gorilla Piss, and your PR song on, and you're strong on that day, but Tuesday comes around, you've worked all day, and it's just, that's not your baseline, right? That's what you can do under the best conditions, and hopefully the best conditions are on competition day.
With any luck, the best conditions will be on competition day. But if not, you built a solid base, you've got your shit together. You don't need to have the certain song playing on your earbuds. You don't have to have your lucky underwear on. You know that you've put in the prep. Everything's in place. You like I said, trust the process. It's going to be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, and yeah, just the whole. I think, just getting back into talking about the value of sports a little bit and stuff like that. Because what it sounds like where you are now, and you're pumped about it. Like, you love what you're doing, but
I do.
But what we kind of talked about just on our own is that wasn't always the case. It was a long journey for you to get here. It was a long journey for you to build the confidence to get out there and I guess to just get out there and compete and perform with everybody else and get into the mix of things when you spend so much time being isolated. And I think there's so much value in sports and physical activity, especially for men when it comes to building confidence. But I wanted to actually talk to you a little bit about more of your time in law enforcement, because I think it's a very misunderstood career path. I think for a lot of people, I think people see on the news what cops go through or how people interact with the police or any kind of law enforcement. But you were kind of saying that it was quite a challenging job, and inevitably you ended up actually leaving the force to pursue something that was a little more meaningful to you. But maybe you can tell me a little bit about some of the challenges of working in law enforcement and how that changed the trajectory of where you are now.
Well, I'll tell you, the biggest challenge I had was when I worked in law enforcement, I was a different person. I had to be a different person 2 different times a day. I was Officer Underwood part of the day, and then I'd get home and I was dad, or I was a husband, or I was an uncle.
So you have to make that immediate psychological shift almost, right? You can't come home and be the Officer Underwood with a child of your wife, right? You're not the all being authority when you get home from work, right?
And that's a tough adjustment. My wife would frequently have to stop and say, Officer Underwood doesn't live here, because you have to be the guy. You have to be hyper vigilant. You have to have situational awareness. You have to, I still to this day, I can't sit with someone behind me.
Mm-hmm.
If we're walking through a store and there's someone behind me, I'll step aside and let them pass me. Just because that's ingrained into you, that's part of your training. It makes you a different person. In my opinion, it made me a bad person. It made me angry. It made me angry at everybody. It made me cynical. It made me question everything.
What was it about it that made you so angry? Was it the job, or was it the people you were dealing with, or a combination of both? Trauma? Like, what was it that started to affect you so negatively?
I think it was a combination. A lot of it was the job. They train you to be like this. They train you to be 24/7 asshole. They train you to be Johnny Hardass. They train you to, put your boot on their neck, when it really doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. My time in law enforcement, I worked inside of basically a maximum security prison.
Mm-hmm.
I actually built relationships with inmates that I wouldn't have with men on the street, because the department I worked for valued division there. They would rather, instead of you getting along with the people you were there to watch and have a harmonious existence, they would rather keep a boot on their neck, keep them beat down.
It's us versus them. We aren't the same. We aren't the same types of people, even though we're all in here almost the same amount of time every day, aside from sleeping, right?
Right.
Well, even sleeping.
Now,
You guys are staying over there at night too, but yeah, it's interesting because I only know what I've experienced, and it's really funny. I keep kind of making these connections, but your story or your life story and kind of your life experiences, I have a lot of commonalities. You know, you dealt with the struggles of coming up in school with, the educational system going against you. You know, I live with that, and I watch my sister live with it, and I watch my parents go through it. And you're talking about the challenges of law enforcement. Well, my father is actually a staff sergeant in the RCMP. And, you know, while I think our training is a lot more thorough, and I think that our pathway to get there is much more difficult. So we don't always get the best guys, but there's a much higher probability that you're going to get people working in law enforcement here and working in corrections that generally want to do a good job when they show up to work and generally want to help people. But from what I've kind of seen a lot of in the research that I've done is that the States is very different and very disconnected, especially when it comes to training. Like some of the police officers are just getting the bare minimum training. Training isn't universal from obviously on a federal level because everything is state to state, and you've got county sheriffs and you've got all these different departments that kind of operate independently. So what's your take on I guess the disconnect that the public has with the police in the United States?
I'm glad you brought that up because I was actually just talking to a friend about this today. In the United States, law enforcement, it's a stereotype, but the kid that was picked on in school, the kid that was beat up in school, I want to carry a gun, I want to carry a badge because I want that authority. Mm-hmm. It's true. It's true. Paul Wagner just mentioned this recently. Every police officer he's dealt with, whether they were good, whether they were bad, when they put on that badge, they're a different person. Mm-hmm. You know, they're the authoritarian. Whether they're helpful or not, they're the authoritarian because they train them this way. They train them to say, you know, I'm better than you. And they should be held to a higher standard because they have training in that specific field. But mm-hmm. these people are trained to keep that higher level. You know, I'm the authoritarian. Don't talk back to me. You can't question my actions. You know, and that's what I dealt with.
There's no empathy promoted, right? You're not experienced or not you're not trained to show empathy to the people that you're dealing with, or even some of the criminals that you're dealing with, right? Because you got to remember, criminals are coming from somewhere. You know, maybe you ended up on a good path and you ended up finding some things to help you cope with some of the challenges that you had in your earlier years. But some guys don't. A lot of guys don't, and they might be coming from the same place. And I think people have this weird superiority complex where they think that if they were brought up under the same dire circumstances as another person, that they would make vastly different choices. And I do not think that is true. I think that people are so much a product of their environment and so much a product of their upbringing. And maybe that's where you can start to make the argument about privilege. And I think zip codes and economic disparity are the number one reason why people end up in these tough places. And you have to empathize with the fact that some of these guys just had a fucking rough life and no one showed them how to do it a different way.
Well, yeah, going back to like you said earlier, you guys in Canada have the universal healthcare, and you have a very good connection between healthcare and government. Down here, mental illness is terrible. Mental illness in prison. If a guy has a mental illness, he commits a crime, rather than fixing him, rather than giving the help he needs, throw him in a hole. Mm-hmm. Throw him in a hole for 5 years and forget about him, and he'll get out in 5 years and do the same goddamn thing.
He'll just become a better criminal. They just learn how to live a life a different way in there, learning life how to live on the inside. And then they come out and they're, well, if I need if I want to junk out on some peanut butter cups, you know, I've got to barter and steal and do all these shady things and lie just to get even simple comforts like that. And then, you know, they come out, it's like, okay, well, that's how I did it on the inside. And especially if they get in there young, that's how they're going to do it on the outside. And it seeps into every corner of society.
Yes. Well, and then, you know, like we were talking about my reasons for leaving. I did all this. I was on a statewide tactical team. Violence was our currency. That's what we did. They called us. Violence was what we did.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, the page flipped. The state of Illinois became ruled by a different faction, we'll call it, because they're gangs here. But anyway, they became ruled by a different faction, and they wanted to start handling things differently. They actually wanted to start going the right direction. They wanted to do mental health evaluations. They wanted to, find out background on these people and start doing things right. Well, at the time, like I said, violence was my thing. Violence is what I did. Violence is what I got paid to do. Mm-hmm. I left. I knew I couldn't thrive in that situation. I've since become the person I am now. Mm-hmm. I don't like violence. I don't like to fight. I now am a peaceful individual. I'm at peace with who I am. I want to be at peace with who everybody else is. I believe the energy you put into this world is the energy you'll get back out of this world. Mm-hmm. Why would you risk putting that shit out into the environment and bringing it back on yourself?
Yeah, exactly. And it always does eventually come home, My dad was pretty good when we were growing up because he wouldn't talk about anything that happened at work. But, he was, when I was growing up, he was a sniper for the emergency response team, which is basically like the American SWAT. And, he'd get a page when I was 5 years old, 6 years old or younger, and I wouldn't see him for a month because he'd be out on some hostage taking, staked out in a bush somewhere up north, and we didn't know at the time, but I think about that now. It's like, there's so many situations where he probably wouldn't have come home, and who knows what happens on those stakeouts, right? This is a team of people that are dealing with the most violent situations, whether it's hostage takings, or you've got the shootouts and things like that, and it's just, or even having to be put in a situation where somebody else's life is at risk and you have to put a criminal down, and then you have to spend the rest of your life thinking about that, right? PTSD is huge with guys that are coming out of law enforcement, and if you don't have the resources to deal with that, from a mental health side, you've got mentally distraught men getting pushed back into the street to deal with other mentally ill people that aren't getting the resources, and it becomes like a class war between the impoverished and the authority figures in society.
It does. You've got, like you said, the PTSD. That's something that I believe is highly understudied. PTSD in law enforcement. I know 3 or 4 men right off the top of my head, good family men, held a job, were highly respected in their communities, out of nowhere committed heinous acts of violence against family, neighbors, friends, with absolutely no explanation. I really think that PTSD and looking into the shit these men in law enforcement deal with is something that should be done. I go through it myself. Like I said, I can't sit in a restaurant with people behind me. I never went through any bad shit. Yeah. Yes, I got in a few scuffles, got a few fights. I never saw bad shit like some of these guys see. These guys go through riots. These guys have to kill people. You think that doesn't fuck them up?
Yeah, and you're constantly experiencing, like, especially if you're dealing with PTSD, this hypervigilance, right? And you've got, especially with a lot of the crazy stuff that's going on right now, I empathize with people that are upset about the relationship between police and law enforcement, because I think it is due for an overhaul. But I also empathize with the guys who really do want to see good happen in the community, whether they're few and far between or whether it's majority, I don't know. But you gotta think, like, these guys are still, like you said, family men, and they're going out there knowing that people want their heads. And then they also have to go out after, in the back of their mind, knowing that serve society well. So it's such a complicated situation. You've got nervous cops, that may have already experienced something that's caused them to have these, like hypervigilance, which is, if they're not getting those services, like, those guys, they need to be pulled out of there, right? And someone else needs to go in and handle those situations, because that's when you end up with more of these crisis type situations where people are either getting hurt where they shouldn't be, or doing things that are out of impulse that just cause these massive outrage, and sometimes rightfully so.
Right. You've got these guys, like you said, they're dealing with shit. They're not being properly decompressed, so to speak. You know, they need training. They need to know how to handle this shit. They need to have people on hand that can handle it, someone to talk to, someone that understands what they're saying, someone that can help them work through what they're dealing with. You start dealing with this shit like that, guys, like you said, random acts of violence. You know, you see men that act, police officers that act impulsively on the street. You don't know what's going through this guy's head. Is it right? No. But you don't know what this guy's been through. You don't know what this guy's got going on. You know, he snapped. He killed this person. Still wrong. Lack of training. You know, that falls back on how he was trained. His superiors, their
falls back on the institutions, right? You know,
right.
Part of it is the screening process. You know, and you look at the situation, right, where they're kind of calling for defund the police or abolish the police, or just calling for an end to law enforcement all in general. Like, who wants to do that job right now? Nobody wants to do that job. Like, some people might feel that call to duty, but, you know, we're going to slowly start to get people who just can't get another occupation. Or maybe you are going to get the guy that just wants to be able to go to work and carry a gun, you know? So you're not going to get the cream of the crop when being a police officer isn't desirable anymore. You know, you don't get training. If you're not getting paid well, that's another problem. And on top of that, if the screening and training isn't done properly, you know, it's kind of just glorified security guards, unskilled security guards going around and just creating more tension.
Well, and I dealt with that towards the end of my tenure in the prison. People weren't wanting to take these jobs because they saw the shift in the tides. They saw that inmates were getting more rights. They saw that it was going to be a more inmate-friendly environment. They saw that the authoritarian business was coming to a halt. So you started getting 18, 19-year-old kids that their only job was delivering pizza,
which is crazy. That's insane to me. Like here in Canada,
off the street.
Here in Canada, at least, they you know, it's quite a strict screening process. You know, you go through a lie detector test, background check, physical test, all these different things to rule out any potential factor. On top of that, you need to have a bunch of other certifications that you get beforehand. And, you know, there's at least measures in place to make sure that we aren't hiring the pizza delivery guy who's been playing fucking Halo for 9 hours a day and finally wants to try out the real thing.
Right. Now, with working for a police department, you'll get a slightly more stringent processing. To work in a prison, you get absolutely nothing, which I don't understand that. I argue with my friends that are police officers. You get to deal with a criminal one night when he does the act. Mm-hmm. I get him for the rest of his life. That's what I used to tell him when I worked in a prison. But it's so bad these days. There are no physical requirements. There is no physical training. I was actually an instructor for combatives. Mm-hmm. And towards the end, that went away. There's no combatives at all.
Wow.
They'll go through the motions and show you how you are to parry a punch, parry a kick. You're not allowed to actually physically do it. They don't go through any type of communication. They're more worried about report writing, legal stuff. Basically, cover our ass for when you fuck up.
But they're facilitating an environment that is almost going to guarantee that they fuck up because they aren't getting the, what's it called? They aren't learning how to reduce the odds of violent or a conflict turning violent.
Right. And then when they do, okay. Yeah. Well, I'm using a ton of battery here. It's telling me we got 10%, so we better hurry up.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, you're running low on bandwidth a little bit, I think.
Yeah. So, but yeah, they're doing this. You know, they're teaching these people how to do this job, but not how to deal with conflict. So when this person handles the conflict wrong, They then hang it on the person, so the administration and the state looks like they're still crystal clear.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like the person is a bad person rather than bad training.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So much of that, like you were saying, like, people talk about the systemic problems, and I think that is true, but it is a combination of that. I think it sounds like, anyways, I'm not an expert on anything, right? But it sounds to me like it's creating an environment where nobody is being set up to succeed. The police officers aren't being set up to succeed. The community isn't being set up to succeed because of a lack of training. And I don't know if defund is necessarily what they need. Maybe it's more money for better training to get the crop candidates in there, so that we can have less of these situations where you've got cops kneeling on guys' necks for 8 minutes and 46 seconds.
I absolutely agree with you on that. If they actually held them to a higher standard and put them through proper training, they could be proud of the job. The community could be proud of what they do for the community. I think we could all come together under that and actually make difference out of this.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And so, I know that you're running a little bit short on time, so I just wanted to make sure that before you go, that people are able to find you online. And if they either want to get some Gorilla Piss or talk to you about your pre-workout or see how they can learn something from you when it comes to training or powerlifting strongman, how are people going to find you?
Instagram, Gorilla_Piss_Ammonia. Come check me out. I've got a Gorilla Piss page on Facebook. Like I said, I don't spend money on websites. I don't spend money on advertising. It's all word of mouth. If your shit's good enough, people are going to talk about it. It's going to get out there.
I like that message. And I just wanted to say thank you for coming on. I've been really trying to build, as I'm in the early stages of my podcast, build a bit of a circle of guys that I really like talking to, that I think have good information to share and support each other. And, guys like you, guys like Joel, Ethan, Jack, this kind of circle that I've been building. And so I'm happy for you to be a part of it. And I hope that we can do another one of these when we have a little bit more time.
I would love to do another one when we have more time.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, buddy. And I'll talk to you soon.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
This episode of the podcast was brought to you by Eisenforged Fitness. Eisenforged is a fitness apparel line with a unique mesh of Golden Age gym apparel and Germanic pagan aesthetics. Head on over to www.eisenforgedfitness.com or follow at Eisenforged_fitness on Instagram to find out how to order. Thanks for listening to this episode of Barbaric Wisdom. I'm Bronson Lee Norton. If you've been enjoying the podcast so far, be sure to subscribe to stay updated on the latest episodes. If you would like to show your support and help us continue to be able to bring your favorite guests onto the show, head on over to www.patreon.com/barbaricwisdom. That's www.patreon.com/barbaricwisdom.